Hi and welcome everybody to Contributing.today, a virtual online meetup which started back when Oktoberfest was still a thing, then continued into a series pre-FOSDEM role, and now I heard we'll be continuing weekly. Today, this is the first weekly session and we'll talk about everything related to Go, and I have three amazing speakers to announce to you tonight. In two amazing talks. The first one will be a Go community panel where we'll answer all your questions. So this is also the first part to notice that we have a chat room. We both have a Discord server which you can join somewhere below, somewhere at the top of our page, or you can even use the chat next to this live stream to talk to us directly. Also, please note when you communicate with us, we have a code of conduct, which you of course can look at our website. After our Go community panel, we also have an overview of the Porter project by Jennifer. If you want to watch the past recordings of Contributing Today, you can also do so on our website, where we have all previous sessions recorded, as well as several interviews with open source maintainers. If you want to tweet, you can use the hashtag, which is right there below me today, which is hashtag Contributing Today. Send you all your funny tweets, send a picture of your desk, where you're watching, from funny places, or whatever you like. And I would like to announce my first two speakers for the Go community panel. So this is Aaron and Carmen.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello, you two. How are you?
Doing good.
Oh, wow.
It's nice to see everyone again.
Yeah, likewise. It's not in person this time, but it'll do.
So I just read that my sound is a bit... Is this better? Just checking. This is all live, so this is not recorded. Everything can go wrong.
I can hear you fine.
Yeah, I can hear you okay too.
Okay. Not sure what's happening. We're not sure what's happening with my sound here. I just read it's better. Sorry, my microphone probably just fell a bit down. So this is the Go community panel. I think one of the most important parts to me anyway about Go is the community. I think you both will agree, or not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So this is what the panel is today about. Also, any questions, of course, from the community. If you have questions, you can place them in the chats. This is kind of an Ask Me Anything. I have two amazing people here who both know a lot about Go. So please post all your questions regarding Gophers, Gophercons, Go programming, Python, maybe not.
We should probably introduce ourselves. Carmen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Carmen Ando. I work at Google with the Go team and the Open Source Programs Office. And I work with open source strategy. I work with contributor summits, engaging the contributor and user community at large. And I'm happy to be here today.
I'm Aaron Schlesinger. I work as a cloud advocate at Microsoft. I do a lot in the Go community, most recently in the Kubernetes and cloud native space. And previously, I did a lot with Go dependency management. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here too, talking about community. Yeah, community. To me, the technology of Go, I think a lot of people, including me, kind of came for the technology and stayed for the community. It's because it's such a pleasant place to be and a pleasant place to contribute to.
Thank you. I already have some questions. Let's first start by a group question. So let's start with Carmen first. I lost it now. Where is it? Sorry, too many things on my screen. So what is it? What got you started with Go?
It was a meetup called Ladies Who Linux in New York City. And so about more than 6 years ago, I worked in what was then systems administration or operations, and it predated the rise of Kubernetes as the operations paradigm. But anyway, the women in that meetup were just great. And Go is a rising language. And about early 2015, I went to a meetup and I was giving Bash tutorials to some of the people who wanted to learn that. And they just simply asked me, hey, we scored some tickets to this GopherCon in Denver, and it's a new language called Go. Would you like to go? And I did. And I have like a really funny, famous story about meeting Russ Cox, but not knowing that Russ Cox was Russ Cox, which is, I kind of equate Russ Cox to Guido for the Go language. And pretty much since then, it was, I never left. I was hooked from then on.
And Aaron, how did you get addicted to Go?
I was working at a company that needed to revamp its internal RPC infrastructure. And this was well before gRPC was a thing, or really anything but HTTP. Actually, they were communicating between services with HTML, if you can believe it. So,
Wow.
so we switched to XML at the time. There was a lot of buy-in for XML. So I changed a C++ 10,000 line code base over to Go because I heard Go had non or less painful XML facilities. So I came for that, and I stayed for the tool chain. And about a year after that, kind of discovered GopherCon and got a lot more involved with the community. And ever since then, I've learned other languages, but I've always come back to Go for, any number of reasons. It just keeps pulling me back in. I'm super happy to stick with it.
Carmen, I got a question that specifically has been asked for you. People would like to know more about what a contributor submit is.
So this is something that many open source projects try to do as their projects grow, or when they want to grow contributors. They have these events called contributor summits. So Kubernetes is almost famous for theirs. And a contributor summit is where we invite people who have maybe shown interest in Go, typically through issues. Typically, it always starts with the issues, like the gateway drug is a GitHub issue. And they just comment, or they say, I have some, or they want to get more involved. And we invite them. Typically, we co-locate that summit in person with another Go conference. And that typically, we want to rotate it around the world. But for the first couple of years, it was always with GopherCon. And I really hope, not to steal Aaron's thunder, I'd really like to do another one for co-located with GopherCon this year. More details on that from Aaron later. But yeah, and what happens in contributor summits is that it really is a high bandwidth place to be able to either talk over existing issues in a GitHub issue repo, or maybe proposals, or surface areas of feedback to the Go core team. And also just, I think the primary function of a contributor summit, in my opinion, is to slurp up empathy in ways that in-person meetings can only do. And so I typically like to invite people who may have been contentious about a technical implementation or proposal, or disagreed with the direction, to these summits in order to be able to see if they can find ways to align misunderstandings. So that's the contributor summit. We had one a year, and then we had hoped to have two last year. Did not go as planned. But when things are in person again, we would like to have more. Kubernetes and other projects have attempted with some success on virtual contributor summits. And so if you're interested in the cloud native, Aaron mentioned that he's involved in that. So am I, because there's a heavy overlap between Go and cloud native. I can also give more. I'll give the link for the show notes for you to get involved more.
Thanks a lot. Flora already said that this is super interesting, and I think she will join. Aaron, I also have a very specific question for you. People like specific questions today. So how is Go for cloud native than Go in overall other communities in terms of community itself?
Well, as probably a lot of people know, Kubernetes is a new, relatively new, and extremely fast-growing technology, and it's grown quite an orbit around it over the past, say, 3 or 4 years. And part of that orbit is called the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, which houses Kubernetes and a community around Kubernetes and a lot of other sort of related technologies. So Kubernetes adopted Go, and most of Kubernetes is built in Go, as are a lot of the other technologies in its orbit. And it's built a community that's not necessarily all Go. So there's a lot of overlap with the cloud native world and the Go community. But there are a lot of things in Go that don't have to do with Kubernetes and vice versa. So I would say the Go community is there's a lot of orientation around language specifics. So most recently, of course, if you're in the community, you've heard a lot about generics. And there's a new proposal for generics, and very recently it's moving forward. That's kind of been decided. Whereas in the Kubernetes world, there's a lot of focus around things like DevOps practices and obviously containers, things like security and networking, and the things that you find more in the sysadmin or ops space. So the communities are actually very similar in terms of how people interact. Carmen already mentioned developer summits, or contributor summits, I should say. But the technologies that we work on just happen to be, I would say, very different.
Thank you. Carmen, I have a follow-up question for you. So, sorry to interrupt, but the question just came in now. You talked a lot about in-person events. How does the co-community picked up the pandemic and evolved in this pandemic, mostly around working in the community, contributor summits, conferences, etc.?
So I have a question here. So how did the Go community work around all of that in the pandemic?
Yes.
Yeah. So March was interesting, right? Because of March of last year, we pretty much understood the consequences of this pandemic when it was called a pandemic. So our office at the time surveyed everything that was happening at that moment. And so there were 32 worldwide Go conferences that were planned. And we reached out to every single organizer and just checked in with them. Partly because many of those organizers were going to lose money on deposits and whatnot, GopherCon being probably the largest. And we typically have a couple of sponsorship. This year, we don't have event sponsorship for in-person events, but we typically try to give sponsorship. And we basically said, if we gave you sponsorship and your conference has to get canceled, just keep it and use it roll it over for the next year. So we worked around that to help people in the immediate aftermath, especially those that were a little bit concerned about what happens to our event. The next thing we did is we partnered with, since the vast majority of events after conferences are meetups, we have a Meetup Pro network. And you can see that on meetup.com/pro/go or /go/pro. I can't remember either one. And we essentially connected them we had some really great volunteers that said, we're going to put an Airtable together, and we now are going to pivot to virtual meetups. And what was great was that we would then have meetup organizers in the Slack channel, and you can sign up at gopherslack.com, say, well, we're going to have a German-speaking meetup, and instead of it being geographically tied to just one location, say Berlin, it could be anybody. Same thing for time zones. We're going to have a meetup. It'll be English first, and it will be this UTC time zone. Anyone can come in. And so we find that the meetups continued, and there wasn't a significant dip in the number of attendees. In fact, it actually increased as a result. So that when we say the workarounds for events, those are the workarounds. For summits, we decided against a summit last year because we just couldn't, I think we really thought that we wanted to check in with people on their burnout. And we think that planning a summit and asking people to take part in a summit and where it was really typically co-located around an event, we just decided that we didn't want to. This year we're considering a summit, but we really felt that the benefit from a summit was the in-person interaction. So the workaround in that case was that we just didn't have one. We decided to cancel. And what I have found is that with other projects, the virtual summits have a mixed bag of whether they work or not, whether or not contributors who attend continue to want to contribute, especially if they were first-time contributors. So it's kind of an experiment that really was only started last year, and the jury is not out.
Thank you. A little follow-up on the meetups. How do you know more about how are they organized? Are they just a one-on-one replica of what they used to be? Did they experiment with new formats? Are they just presenting on a stream like we are right now?
So the interesting ways that they've adapted to the virtual format is by sometimes going longer and going fewer. So typically what would happen is everyone wanted to do a meetup. And if you really looked at the pro network, in any given day, there was a meetup in some city or country or township across the world. There's something like, I can't even remember, something like thousands of groups. And so the virtual adaptation was that we tried to coordinate along time zones. And then we tried to build in lots of, or some of the organizers build in lots of time for games and socializing and ways to try to connect, because that's really why we go to meetups, right? To feel part of a community, to feel a shared identity. And so the networking time had to be, that was just kind of natural and organic, that happened before and after the meeting, now is being thought of more intentionally. That we, instead of saying this meetup is going to be 2 hours and 30 minutes of networking and 1.5 hours of talks, they're intentionally building, icebreaker time and game time and any time to help people feel connecting over these screens of ours. Games. Okay, so there's another question I see in the comments. And yes, it is like a pub quiz. I will pass on. It's famous in the London Gophers meetup. So the Go language has a language spec. And therefore, there can be some really interesting pop quizzes. And we have a really famous pop quiz Twitter run by Dave Cheney. And the London Gophers take that one step further. And it's almost like a ritual. They have like 2 talks, and then between the second and third talk, they give you this pop quiz, and you're given like 10 minutes to figure it out, and the winner wins something. And it's really, really very fun. And so I really have to hand it to the London Gopher organizers that have socialized this quiz beyond London, and now many other meetups are picking up and doing just that.
Yeah, and the Portland, Oregon meetup in the U.S. Took that, and we raffle off. The last time we raffled off GoLand JetBrains Go IDE year. I think it was a year subscription to that. I'll just mention another thing, just specifically from our use case. We share a time zone with Seattle in the US as well. And we basically merged with them because the overhead and frankly, the emotional toll and mental toll that it takes to organize a meetup, as some know, is a lot. It's not like organizing a conference, but it's a lot. You gather speakers and so on. And there was an added challenge now of figuring out what virtual venue to use to host the meetup. So we joined forces and ended up getting more total people into our meetups than the sum of the people that we got when we were in person and separate. So that worked out really well. And I think we may eventually host a permanent virtual meetup even after things go back to in person. Not necessarily exclusive of the in-person stuff, but we would add a virtual component to it. So there's a tiny, tiny little silver lining to all of this, that we kind of found a new format that works for us to kind of complement what we hope to get back to.
That's amazing. Have either one of you ever won a Dave Cheney pub quiz?
I've won the local meetup quiz, but not a Dave Cheney one.
I never won them prior to joining the Go team, because they really are very little gotcha edge cases inside the spec. But I did win one after, because it was a cheat. I had just heard it was a changing behavior in the defer function, and I had just heard from the team the week before, and then it was put so I didn't want to cheat, so I just let somebody else take the prize. So
I'll give you the prize for fair play online pub quizzes.
Thank you. Yeah.
Here it is. It's a gopher. Don't have pick a gopher.
Yeah.
So we've been talking a lot about events, and a little bird, Twitter, told me, Aaron, that you're involved a lot in GopherCon and that you got some exciting news to share.
Yeah, I think it's in the Discord too. The CFP for GopherCon US is open on April 5th. So get your proposals ready and get them in early. And the plan right now is to have the conference on, let me just make sure I have the dates right. The plan now is to have the conference December 6th to 8th, and have a in-person element, but also have a virtual element as well. So if you can't make it or don't feel comfortable coming, just like this year was virtual, this coming 2021 GopherCon will also have the virtual element to it, and you'll be able to participate in the conference just as you did this year as well. So yeah, if you're considering speaking, even if you've never spoken before, even if you've never put in a proposal to a conference before, we'd love to see your proposal. As with every year, we'd love to have new speakers as well. And there will be a lot more news coming out. We've got more announcements to make about the CFP, about the conference. So stay tuned to the GopherCon Twitter, and stay tuned to other channels that we'll be shouting from when news comes out. That's my spiel about GopherCon. I'm really excited to finally be able to have this progress.
So, an anonymous question: what is the cheat code to get into the talks?
Carmen, I'll let you take this one and start.
I was asked to be on the committee, I think for the 2016 GopherCon, and I remember even back then it was like 192 talk submissions. And what I've noticed about every GopherCon since then is that in the beginning years, we had a finite single track number of talks to choose from. And we knew that people were spending a lot of time and money to come. And we made I don't want to say a mistake, but we decided that we wanted to keep it only to Go. And in the later years, I've seen the trend, and Aaron, you can say no or not, whether or not you've seen this trend, but I've seen that GopherCon is becoming more and more like what PyCon is becoming, because it has multiple tracks, and we're seeing an evolving understanding of what it means to write Go as Go is growing. But so the cheat codes, though, in the past used to be, if there was a talk about it in years past, try something new, try a new type of take on it, or just a brand new topic in general. But if you're kind of aware about what's going on in the language ecosystem, that is one good cheat. Another good cheat is always like, we tried this thing and this is why it failed. And it works equally as well as, we tried this and here's a use case, or here's a success story. So I like hearing about those. So those are I always like hearing those cheat codes in terms of, I'm going to walk away from this talk having learned some information about what not to do, because what not to do is equally as important as what to do.
Yeah, and I want to throw something in the ring too. So completely agree with what you said, Carmen. I'm going to add two things that I always say. So if you've heard me talk about CFPs before, there's nothing new here. One thing is you always need to tell the review committee what you are going to give the audience and what they're going to walk away from the talk with. We want talks that are going to be interesting to the audience and preferably that they'll learn something. So success story or failure story, of course, the audience is going to learn a lot from something like that. Another one that could be if you've developed or discovered a new pattern for writing Go or a new application of Go. We've had talks writing Go that runs on drones and robots, for example, or a lot of things about how to write better Go for distributed systems. Those are just examples, just things that have popped at the top of my head. The other one that I really want to stress is when you write a proposal, tell the review committee why you think you are a good person to give that talk. Doesn't mean that you need to be an expert in Go or that specific topic. In fact, it can actually be good that you're a beginner with Go or a beginner with that topic. But if you're writing a proposal, let's say on writing Go for drones, tell us why you think that you're a good person to write Go for drones and a good person to teach people how to write Go for drones. If you do those two things, you'll be in a good spot. Of course, that's not the only thing. That's not a guarantee that you're going to get accepted. But those are two things that will get you on your way to having a really strong proposal.
Thank you. Turning the debate around, we talked a lot about the speakers, which you're looking for. How about attendees? What is the audience for GopherCon? Is it people who start with Go, people who know what the for works in the great detail for the Dave Cheney quiz? Or is it the people in between? Or all?
The audience is interested in Go, not necessarily hardcore people who design the language or have been using it for 10 years. Not necessarily all people who had heard the name and think they want to check out a new language. It's a mix, but all of them are coming to the conference because of Go, and not necessarily because they want to learn how to write Go. I keep going into this example. Not necessarily because they want to learn how to write Go for drones or Go for distributed systems. So what we generally say is if we're going to choose a talk for the main theater, that has to be a generally interesting talk for everyone from beginners to experts, everything in between. Whereas in the tutorial sessions, those are going to be self-selecting. So if you've got a talk you want to do for a tutorial about distributed systems, people who are interested in distributed systems will come to that talk, but most likely nobody else. So those are generally good to be specific and to probably more of a deep dive, whereas main theater, probably not going to be a good idea. And I really stress probably, it's not definitely, probably not going to be a good idea to have a distributed systems talk that dives deep in the main theater.
Thank you. Do you accept the proposal for go-karts?
What do you think, Carmen?
That sounds cool. That sounds really cool. Submit it. I want to read it.
So Nick, you go to gophercon.com/CFP. I hope that link works. What's the CFP link, by the way?
That's not released yet.
Sorry.
We literally don't have one yet, but it'll be on the front page of gophercon.com when it's out.
I got a quite interesting question. Given that Carmen gives you an unlimited sponsoring budget, what would GopherCon look like?
Oh, so Google's going to give Write a
I'm
blank
not
check.
saying any. I'm not saying anything, but you get a blank check from a particular sponsor.
Oh,
So we get a blank check. I don't do a lot with the budget. I focus a lot more on the program. Um,
mm.
so I can give my opinion, what I would like, but I'm not going to speak for GopherCon here. This is personally only.
Yeah,
So
this is personal. I'm not giving you. Please write a 10-page manifesto on what GopherCon is. Just a personal view.
so I'm gonna agree with you, Carmen. I'm gonna say it would be really cool to have a GopherCon travel the world and have not only the contributor summit, but also have talks from local gophers around the world. So GopherCon, the one that I was talking about, is going to be in San Diego, California, in the US in December. That's great because it's relatively warm there in the winter, but it would be really cool to have GopherCon when it's okay to get back to in-person events, have GopherCon either go to new places, so go to a bunch of places in South America and Europe and Africa and Asia, but also possibly partner with other conferences too. So of course we have GopherCon EU, and that's the last time it was in person. I think it was in Berlin. Is that right?
Yep. Well, it was planned on being in Berlin. It was Iceland, actually, or no, Tenerife.
Okay, that
And
was
then
the
the next
last.
year was supposed to be Berlin, and then Berlin never happened. So
Okay, yeah. So they're in Berlin. It would be cool to possibly co-locate a GopherCon maybe in the winter in somewhere warmer, southern Italy or something like that, right? And then go to Asia and partner with GopherCon Singapore. Is that what it's called? I don't. Yeah, GopherCon
Yeah,
Singapore. And have that kind of model as well. So more GopherCons, more conferences for gophers around the world, accessible to people, to gophers in that region would be great. Not necessarily having more swag, not necessarily having bigger parties. Gophers are pretty good at having their own parties, I think. But having more accessibility to people around the world, I think would help foster and grow a much, much stronger Go community than we have now, which is to say, maybe one of the biggest programming communities in the world, because we've got a great community as it is.
that's amazing. And I'm gonna immediately make your vision a new question for Carmen. And it is, what are some incentives for the community to grow a more sustainable and healthy community, one that is inclusive and accessible and welcoming to everyone?
So we have some initiatives. Marcia would know one because Marcia is the CEO president of Women Who Go, a global interconnected network of women first or not men meetups sponsored and events sponsored for Women Who Go. Women Who Go also has its own Slack channel, which I heavily for the people who feel shy, women and gender minorities who feel shy, I heartily recommend that organization. The other organization is GoBridge, which is a subsidiary of Bridge Foundry. There's other bridges like Rails Bridge, and it's similar to, for those of you who know, Rails Girls or Django Girls. But this is for all genders, and really the qualifications are that you are coming from an underrepresented background in some way, shape, or form. It could be that you have no formal education. It could be that you're not. We've really sort of looked at what is it that's keeping people out, and what are some of the structural inequities. And if we find that you are a person who's underrepresented because of these structural inequities, GoBridge is for you. So the initiatives that within Women Who Go and GoBridge, there's partnerships with Google, with the Go Developer Network, which the Meetup Pro Network is part of. We also expanded last year to include a mentorship platform. And there are plans this year to move that platform to another place, which I cannot say right now because I really want it to come to pass rather than say it on air and then it doesn't happen. But we do want to make it, again, accessible and available to that Go community. Welcoming for beginners, keep in mind that for GoBridge, it typically is technical workshops for beginners. And for women who go, it's women of all skill levels and abilities who just want that safe space. So the other place, in terms of accessibility, we do try to, I know that GopherCon is one of the premier events, has worked with some of the accessibility experts to think about accessibility within the content, accessibility with the venue. And so that's another thing that we try to give to meetup organizers to try to scale that. Like, here are some accessibility aspects that you want in your virtual events, your in-person events, etc. So think of it like an accessibility code of conduct as a way for you as an organizer to try to consider. And the good news in that is that just simply put it out there in the meetup. Say if you have, which is hard because people with accessibility needs don't want to have to say, I need this and I need that and I need that, but just to make sure we do ask that they just try to, so we want to be accessible. We want to help with anybody who needs those supports. And so here's what we can offer. And if this is not hitting what your needs are, then please let us know. So I guess did I hit all the kind of ideas? I mean, there's a lot more that we're thinking about when we think about what makes a community sustainable and what makes a community healthy. But those were the ones that specifically tried to target what I call structural inequities and inclusivity.
That sounds amazing. I see many hearts, and I see Nick even wants to now, because of you, and of course because of Aaron, all this nice stuff, wants to really start learning Go. And talking about learning Go, I got a question, which is what would you like to see from other languages in Go? And I want to also put up a follow-up question there. What do you want to see from Go in other languages? Why do you love Go? Aaron?
I'm gonna say something that I would like you to follow up on, Carmen. I've said a lot. I've said the community. I like the tool chain. I like the XML handling and the concurrency, all that stuff. But this one is really specific, but to me, it's really important. Go was literally the first language I had ever seen where you could get started without installing anything. So play.golang.org and the tour of Go, tour.golang.org, were really great for me. I was fine installing it, but I could install it on my work laptop and then go home and try it, do something quick on my personal laptop. Or even better, I could write some code and then literally give someone a unique link and say, this is my idea for how to run something. But someone gave away my next point. Now there's an even better learning resource, playwithgo.dev, play-with-go.dev. And I'm not saying this just to plug it. I'm working with some of the people behind the scenes to get more learning material on here for a reason. It's such a great resource because you now have, at least in my opinion, you now have like a course style, like the quality of this learning is on par with a Coursera, in my opinion. And you can go through and not just learn Hello World, but you can actually learn deep subjects in Go. So I mentioned before, I worked a lot on dependency management in Go. So you can get really deep into that, or you will be able to. You can get really deep into concurrency. You can get really deep into IO and so on and so forth. Now, that's huge to me. Now, this is, again, one of the first languages where there's an officially supported place to go, pun intended. There's an officially supported place to go to learn deep into the language, not just learn Hello World or how to read from a file, but learn the depth of the language. So, Carmen, thank you for helping to set that up. Thank you for continuing to work on it. I would like to just really stress, go check that site out if you're Nick and you want to go beyond Hello World, or you're someone else watching this and you want to go learn more about Go.
Part of the inspiration for that site was a conversation that I had with Aaron about a year ago.
Oh,
And
cool.
Aaron is a case of an ecosystem. So there are many projects that are written in Go, whether it's a Caddy web server or Athens or Go mods or whatever have you. And so Aaron said, we would love to get more help with our project. And I said, well, what are you talking about when you say help? And we kind of dug into that a little bit. And what we found was that the key to sustainability in many Go projects in the ecosystem was, one, documentation. I think that's a pillar for any open source project, but also onboarding. The idea that I really want people to help contribute to Athens, but there's so many things that have to happen along the way for them to be able to understand. And so what is great with Play with Go.dev is that it's not just a learning resource, it's a resource for the entire ecosystem. It's a resource for someone like Aaron or any of the maintainers on Athens to say, I'm going to write an Athens tutorial. And the great thing about this is that this documentation will never get stale because it's automatically tested. So we talk about the idea of documentation going stale and fixing that problem. But also, here's an interactive way for me to share that code and for you to learn it in real time instead of having to wonder, what kind of code snippets do I need to copy paste into my environment? Is my environment set up correctly? What am I doing wrong? So it's really great to help you troubleshoot. And so it really was a great scale. Well, what I hope it's only going to be as good as people put into it, the entire ecosystem. And it was just launched in November. But I do hope that more of the Go ecosystem does look to use it, and whether that's a beginner learner or whether that is a person that is working on a project and needs project documentation or project onboarding.
Executable documentation is so cool.
Yeah, this is really what I hope to have, and I like that it's community owned and community maintained, and they even have like a contributor's guide to contributing. Like you said, it's sort of streamlining, how do I use this tool in order to help me with the ecosystem? So that kind of plays to the idea of a sustainable, healthy community. Starts with helping people who already have learned Go as well as learners, and trying to serve both of those audiences. The last little bit that I mentioned, there's Play with Go.dev, but there's also Learn.go.dev. And that is a series of learning on Go.dev in general. So let's say that you're already a developer, and this is a very common use case. I'm a PHP developer, but I really want to learn Go. How can I convince my manager? Or I'm in Python, and I read a lot about Go. I heard it's great for performance. How do I convince my team to switch? So Go.dev is a great site to show use cases of companies large and small about their Go journey and how and why they're using it. Because what we found is that most companies, they look left and they look right to see who's doing what and did it work for them. And if it's good enough for them, maybe it's good enough for us to invest in. So Go.dev is the parent page, but then there's another one, a subpage called Learn.go.dev. And what it tries to do there is look at learners and say, how do you like to learn? Do you prefer books? Do you prefer podcasts? Do you prefer interactive tutorials? Do you prefer YouTube videos? And then tries to offer different modalities. Or they look at the opposite, which is, you already know that what you're interested in is web development for Go, or maybe you're interested in more of command line apps in Go. So looking at both the modality as well as what I call the task-based, or the industry or the vertical. So those are the, to kind of complete the set of all the different ways that you can think about Go and how to learn. You start at the tour, you continue to use the playground, you continue to go on with Play with Go.dev or Learn.go.dev. And then to finally answer your question, you ask, well, what could you change about Go? And My answer is nothing, but we've listened to the world at large, and one is about generics. So generics is a common functionality of types that is used in languages particularly like Java and C++, and generics are on the way with Go. They might be coming in about a year, but we do have, and I'll post it here, a generics playground, which is, go play to the number .golang.org for you to test out generic data types and see how a generic Go would look like for you. And this is going to help target those users who said, I can't ever use Go because I use generics up and down our code base and I could never deal with the slog of not using them. So
I think many people will be pleased to hear when this finally reaches in the final Go version. Aaron, I got a specific question for you. So you mentioned before that you really love the toolchain. Can you tell us what you like about it? What does it look like for people who don't use the Go toolchain every day?
Sure. Yeah. So I came from Scala as my primary language that I wrote professionally, and Scala is in some ways it's a superset of the Java JVM ecosystem. So for those who have used that, I think it's generous to say that the tools for Java are very customizable, and for me, that's kind of a nicer way of saying that they're very complicated too. So you pay for that customization. So Go has done something Go's done something for me that's very interesting to make the tool chain very powerful yet simple. Go generally ships a single binary that does everything you want, mostly everything you want. It's called the Go binary. You literally type Go space build or Go install or test or whatever. And inside of those subcommands, there's a lot of power. You can run code coverage tests and benchmarks within the Go test command. And you can literally build and install binaries into your executable path using Go install. Go build is probably obvious. And dependencies are done with Go space get, and that list goes on as well. So I mentioned earlier, I came for the XML processing, but I stayed for the tool chain. And I really actually do mean that, because it was so refreshing to be able to come from Scala, where XML processing would have taken 150 lines of code plus another 300 lines, and I'm not exaggerating here, plus another 300 lines of SBT configuration code, Scala build tool. It was really refreshing to be able to do that, to be able to come and not even have to write a makefile, literally type Go build. But then as I kind of journeyed onwards, and then also as dependencies, modules entered the Go world, I kept finding that I don't have to write makefiles. I can literally remember how to build by typing Go build or Go get the new dependency. And it's that tendency for the toolchain to get out of your head, to not add complexity to your workflow. That to me is massive, because it lets me focus on the code, and that's huge for me.
I can only agree. So we are coming to the near at the end of the scheduled time which we have. So if you want the users, you have 1 minute to tell them something about Go. What would be your very last words, Carmen?
Go made me love programming again. I mean, it really, I think, speaking to Aaron's simplicity, instead of having to think about all the crust around programming, I could just get to work and program. And so I hope that you find the same simplicity as a strength for Go when you try it, if you already haven't.
So I'll talk a little bit about cloud native Go. I've been diving really deep into Kubernetes lately. If someone is looking for a project to start on and is already interested in containers or DevOps or Kubernetes or something like that, there's a cool set of projects, in my opinion, called KEDA, KEDA, and there's the link. All right. Go check that project out. It's a pretty good project to get started with if you're interested in the cloud native world. Um, it's cool technology to me. It's a cool group. It's a really nice, inclusive group of folks, and you'll be contributing to something that really makes a big impact on enterprises that are relying on this stuff for production workloads. So, highly recommend CADA. Oh yeah, I forgot. I actually gave a talk on CADA, a subset of CADA at this very meetup, and it looks like it's in Discord now. So you can go check out more about that. And there's another session, not only on the subset of CADA, but on CADA core itself. So you can go check that out and get some more background too.
It's amazing. So you can just stay at the same site, scroll below, look for CADA, and you can get started. I want to thank you all very much for joining us here virtually from all around the world to this meetup. Thank you very much.
A pleasure, Marcia.
So that's the end of our first Go community panel, but the amazing evening hasn't ended yet. We talked a lot about the community of Go, the language of Go, but let's talk about a project we're doing Go. So I have here live with me Jennifer, who works on Porter. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, so my name is Jennifer Davis. I do contribute to the Porter project. My day job is that I'm a developer relations manager at Google, and I manage a team that is working on serverless, and we support a number of different projects and languages, helping facilitate how people are able to do all things with serverless. So is it cool for me to just like start talking about Porter? Because Porter is exciting to me.
The virtual stage is yours. I hear you're excited. Take it away. I'll go quickly grab a drink and some snacks, and I'll just enjoy this.
Awesome. If you want to go ahead and put my screen up as well, because I'm not going to go here first, but I'm going to talk about it, and it's a good place to start. So I loved the previous session with the panelists. I wanted to go start talking a little bit about Go and how I got involved in Go myself. And I have seen for years the amazing community that is Go. And I joined the Slack, the Women Who Go, Go Bridge, and it was hard for me to find that time in my workday to learn, and I struggled. And one of the things that I learned about for myself is that having ADHD and learning new skills, it's really hard, even if you really want to and you're really interested. And I learned a new way of doing things. And so one of the things that's helped me really level up my Go learning is doing this stream with Aaron, who was in the previous panel. And we do a Let's Go stream on Mondays. And I encourage everyone. This is such a great community, so welcoming. The GopherCon is fabulous, and it's a great place to connect with more parts of the community, but it is there and available. And no matter how you learn, there are ways to learn Go. So when I was attending GopherCon, it feels like a lifetime ago, one of the people I met there was Carolyn, who is someone who's been a huge part of the Go community in terms of helping make it more inclusive, thinking about different parts. I learned about the Porter project from her. And as I started exploring it, it fits all these check boxes for me in terms of what I thought about projects and what I wanted out of a community of projects. And so I'm going to talk more about the community and how you can get involved in a little bit, but I just wanted to sort of give that path into where it came from for me. It was one part Go, one part, wow, this is a really inclusive community of folks working together on this, and one part infrastructure. So with the ops background, I am really fascinated by all things that make ops more accessible And so one of the things I would love for everyone to do right now, as I start talking about what I think of this, but just share what you think infrastructure is. When we think about infrastructure in a computing sense, what does infrastructure look like? Okay, so for me, as an ops engineer who then has also done software engineering and has seen this progression, and then how we've gone from managed infrastructure, or like we manage it, to managed infrastructure to serverless. To me, I define infrastructure a little differently than if you look it up in a book, specifically around computing. And to me, infrastructure is that set of fundamental resources that includes the services, the software, the compute, and all of the human processes that are required for a system to function. If you take away those human processes and the infrastructure is failing to work as intended, or the impact to the customer is not what they want, that's a problem. So one of the things that's come out in these last decade or so of computing is that we have this concept of infrastructure as code. And now, no criticism of anyone, because not all places have adopted it yet. Sometimes it's just too hard, not enough people enabled to take things from manual infrastructure to infrastructure as code. But when we talk about infrastructure as code, we don't think about all of those components that I defined as infrastructure, the software, the compute, and the processes. What it usually is some slice of that as an approach to automate the computing. Maybe it's provisioning, maybe it's configuring. All these different tools that are infrastructure as code will take just a part of it. So then that is like, well, how do I solve this whole problem? And then it goes back to, why am I trying to solve this problem? Well, as a human, I need things to be consistent and repeatable. I need to know that whatever I'm running will make my infrastructure match what I need. I want to see visibility into all of the changes early so that I can do code review and I can have small changes that allow me to like estimate risk better about what's happening in my system. I want to be able to define, provision, and manage those resources. And I want small projects, just like if we look at the DORA research that showed that small changes in code is part of high performing teams. I want to have small changes in code in my infrastructure projects so that I can manage that and be a high performing ops team. And I want to manage all the server sprawl. So it's not just like random servers installed for testing and the dev systems and inconsistencies across that, and eliminate all the toil around that. So think about the last time that you started at a job and people told you what the process is for getting started, or maybe they didn't tell you the process. And it started out with, okay, first you're going to git clone this particular project, and then you're going to log into this piece of infrastructure, and maybe to get that infrastructure, wait, you're going to have to go do a Terraform run so that you can make sure that it provisions it. Oh, and actually you also need Helm to deploy to the Kubernetes cluster. Oh, and we've got these bash scripts that glues everything together. And then you can log in and validate and check that everything's okay. And so when I look at that, there was this huge gap, right? There's all of these pieces that we assume that everyone knows. Maybe you have to make sure there's specific versions of each of these tools. Oh, well, I just downloaded latest and it doesn't work with our current version. And maybe there's a bunch of environment variables and different tools that I need to run. And oh, what about credentials? Do you have credentials for every single service? Okay, so I've talked a lot about these different pieces and infrastructure in general. And so what does that have to do with Porter? Right? Well, okay, Not there quite yet. All of these gaps that I've talked about, these gaps in our infrastructure understanding, there's a bunch of people that came together to create the CNAB spec. And you can actually go read about the CNAB spec. It's still something in progress. They're still adding. You can contribute to this. This is actually a project. It's underneath the CNCF, and you can become part of it. The original collaboration was done by Microsoft Azure, Docker, Pivotal, Intel, and HashiCorp. So this wasn't a single company like defining this is how this needs to be. And the idea was to bundle up the infrastructure in such a way that it includes the software, the infrastructure provisioning piece, and the actual human processes, all those little scripts that you might run. And the idea being that this is the next level. It's not something that people talk of as like, this is infrastructure as code, but it creates this sort of bundle. So then what is Porter? Porter is an implementation of the CNAB spec. And now I say that because Porter is so much more. Porter is a community of people. It's Michelle, this little cat. It is all of the places that we can help and come together and contribute to making our infrastructure better. So Porter implements the CNAB spec, and it has a few different pieces to it. There's a manifest, there's mix-ins, because we're not trying to replace your Terraform or your Helm. The mix-ins are how you're going to bring in all of these other tools that you use. Porter's just the nice, helpful cat who is going to glue it all together for you, including all these processes and credentials that you might need. So the benefits is you're going to use all the tools you're already using. You abstract away all the complexities with a single command. So Porter is going to be that command. And you get the verification that you've installed from a trustworthy source because you've built all your pieces and then you've bundled it together. So let's dig in. Okay, so this is the Porter website, and this is where if you were just a general person coming in, you would see this. So we have a set of steps that tell you how to install Porter, and that's going to run you through just the basics, getting it installed. It's all Go. So if you're familiar with Go, you'll understand it. It's going to feel very familiar. And then we have a quick start guide, and it's going to walk you through how to create a new bundle. The cool thing is once you install it, if you run through this quick start with Porter Create, it's going to create this manifest file, which is the porter.yaml file. And you can actually look at it directly. This is, as with every language, we start with hello world. And it's going to help you do that hello world. So this is the Porter bundle. The mix-in is going to be how I do things. So if I have the shell scripts, exec is going to be the way that I can run those shell scripts. And I can set up actions of install, which is installing the application that I want to install, upgrading the application I want to upgrade, and uninstalling the application. So it's really just straightforward sets of actions tied with what I need to do to run it. And you are more than welcome to run through this quick start as a quick way to say, yeah, this is actually a pretty cool and interesting project. The next level is actually thinking about, well, okay, I want to contribute. I don't want to just consume stuff from the project. I want to actually contribute. Well, the cool thing about Porter is we have a contributor guide. So we are really clear. What is the project about? Where can you start? Based on whatever level of experience you have, whether it's Go or something else, we have ways to help you get started. So we walk through different areas where we have contributions that would be useful. And we also walk you through how to contribute. And this is going to help you first try Porter so you can know what it should look like, and then set up your environment with all the tools that we use to build Porter so that when you make changes, you can see what they look like. Okay, so getting into the nitty-gritty. Porter is on GitHub. We have a number of issues and pull requests. It follows some of the same practices that you have in other projects. But one of the things that's really great about Porter and why I love this project is one that I recommend for folks to get started, especially if they haven't been really participating in open source before, is that it's really clear. We have contact details. We specify what we're looking for. We've got our new contributors guide, which is going to talk through expected SLAs of if you put in a pull request, how long will it take to get it looked at? If you've got an issue, what happens there? We've got a roadmap, which isn't, I really like the way that it's described, is it's not a, here's exactly where we're getting to, but here's the things that we're looking to, and we're not specifically saying this is happening, but this is the goal. And this makes it accessible to everyone to understand, oh, okay, here are the things that are possible based on the number of contributors. Now, one of the things that first sort of gripped me when I started looking at the Porter project was the labeling and use. Now, Carolyn is the emoji CEO, or is it CTO? I'm not sure. But she's fabulous at understanding and connecting with the humans. And so one of the things that first jumped out at me is like these labels. And the thing about it is, okay, we all can connect with food to some degree, right? And so instead of just going, this is a P0 and like has to be done, it's like, let's talk about the emergency donuts. And then let's talk about the chocolate after the emergency donuts. And then, yeah, we can all have pizza every day. And so it's like giving this order and context to how you can think about what issues there are. There's also these other ones that provide you more context if they're tagged to say, okay, like design, yeah, when we're in the design process, it's totally cool to bike shed and think about what color the bike shed should be. When it comes to docs, like here are things that we might need. Same with follow-up or gaps. A good first issue. A lot of times you go to a project and it says this is a good first issue, where it's like people have totally tagged in and said this would be nice for contributors. I really like the process that is taken in this project of defining a good first issue. And I'm going to actually look at one because I feel like it's just one of those things that's just like, this is amazing. There's also, if you've got more experience, you might want to look at the help wanted. And we think about all contributors within the Porter project. We are welcoming either the casual contributor who stops by for like one-offs, or those people who want to build up and join into the community. We're also really clear, like, don't work on this one yet because this means it needs more thinking time as a community. We've got to stop and think about what's going on. So let's go ahead and look at one of these good first issue bugs. So when Carolyn or another member of the team writes out a good first issue, it's usually going to contain a lot of detail so that you can, as a person coming into the project, have the understanding of what is expected. Here is a comment where Carolyn has gone through more into the details of what is the expectation. So the goal with a good first issue is that it's really clear where do you get started and how you know what done is. A lot of times, if you look at issues in some projects, it's like, well, how do I know when I'm done with this or when I should actually submit a pull request to say, like, here it is. And then you get that back and forth. And then by the time it's really, really ready, there's some kind of conflict. This makes it much easier to get started with the project when you know what the expectations are. Another area is where like we have user experience issues. This is going to talk through, okay, how do we think through these different pieces? So Porter is Go, is written in Go, but there's so much more than just writing code that is a welcome contribution. Any of these issues that are open, you're more than welcome to contribute your thoughts and ideas. Also, if you see common questions coming up, if you see things, you can go through and look at the closed issues. If you see common questions, a good way to start. Another thing is to just create an update to the FAQ and say, like, here's the FAQ and here's the answer, the question that I see and the answer. And that is an update to the FAQ. Another piece is thinking through what are the areas of help that people might need and write a tutorial. Or if you have a blog post or any kind of content that you want to contribute. We keep track of contributors in the Porter repository, and that's another area. Once you contribute something, go ahead and add your name to the contributors list, because everyone who has donated their time and efforts to making Porter better is a contributor. We don't consider contributors just to be the people who write code. So me presenting to you today, like, this is one aspect of me contributing to this project. I hope this has been helpful in giving a little insight into what the Porter project is trying to achieve, and a little bit of an introduction to our community. If there's any questions, I'd love to hear from you, and I hope to see you soon on the Porter, in the Porter repos, or in our meetings that I have totally forgot to share, but our Porter development meetings are open for anyone to join. The next meeting will be February 24th, and they're every other Wednesday at 6 to 7 p.m. UTC.
Oh, hi, I'm back. Thank you very much. I'm very interested to dig more into Porter. I really love the emoji everywhere. And you contributing is also a very good idea, because GitHub doesn't always reflect the most valuable contributions, in my opinion.
It's one of the things that is just so frustrating about like how we talk about what contributions people make. And so it's just nice to see. One of the cool things is all the Porter assets. The Michelle is right here, and you can see different versions of the Porter Michelle.
Are those drawing instructions?
It is so great.
Oh, nice.
So we totally need more artists in contributing to open source. This was like, I had a huge squee when we had Michelle. I was like, this is totally Carolyn's influence. But this is like, it's just sweet Porter cat.
So Floor is pushing me very hard to ask you for the backstory of how Michelle came to be.
So there was a very awesome human being named Michelle who contributed to early Porter. And so the name Michelle comes from that awesome contributor. And the cat was done, it was a collaboration with Carolyn, and the name of the person is totally slipping my mind. This person right here, Ronan. Yes, Ronan is awesome. And Ronan and Carolyn collaborated on bringing Michelle to life. Carolyn could probably tell this story much better than me.
I have a feeling if Carolyn is involved in a project, there's gonna be cats.
And beautiful emojis.
Yeah, both both amazing things in my opinion. I also got a question. You mentioned community calls every other week. How do you come up with the agenda?
How do we come up with the agenda? That is that it comes up in the discussions. We use GitHub discussions, as well as there's a Slack channel. So if you look on the community site, there's details about the Slack, and you can just join in the Slack and come in. And that's where the calendar, the agenda gets configured or planned. But also there is a public calendar. If you go to the Porter dev site, there's a link there, but it's just part of the CNCF. They provide Porter is a sandbox project in CNCF, and so there's an open calendar. Sorry.
Are you reading the same that I'm reading?
Yeah, I saw
this
this
question,
Michelle have a
this question
SoundCloud.
comes from a organizer that foolishly committed to a weekly online meetup and is looking for agenda IDs, I guess. So you know how to come up with an agenda. Just have Slack discussions, have an open document, and maybe you will catch on the weekly meetup agenda. I also have a question about Michelle again. Does Michelle have a SoundCloud?
Not that I know of. I feel like Michelle needs a whole backstory now and adventures. That
is there an illustrated children's guide to Porter coming up? I'm happy to contribute to that one.
We need to let Ronan and Carolyn know that there should totally be, because it's so fantastic. I mean, we got the little bundle cards here.
Yeah, I'm reading already the chat room ideas to have a Michelle shop, a Michelle swag, a college sweater. Everybody loves Michelle. So I have a more serious question now. I'm sorry, everyone who wants to talk about Michelle. Maybe we should do a Michelle meetup later. What is the process for defining the Porter roadmap?
That's fantastic. So one of the things that I mentioned earlier was the Porter roadmap. It's not like in a lot of projects you see this sort of the roadmap is this like vicious cycle of, I shouldn't say vicious, but it's like the whole like Scrum done bad or Agile done bad, where it's like you must do these things, and like it causes a lot of stress on people. It's more a here's the main thing to know is these are the things in progress. We've got a backlog, and then everything that we have people coming in with ideas, but we're not going to be able to, like, this is a combination of things. We don't have any sort of contributors able to work on those at this time. So it's like any of these pieces can come up into the in progress basically by people getting involved in the contributor process and us elevating them to it. So the roadmap is very much a collaborative effort, and it happens mostly on a quarterly basis, I would say, just figuring out like what's happening next, where are we going, how does this move on. The other interesting thing about how we do our roadmap is we don't erase or like move stuff off. We always just keep adding it to done. So you can see over time all the things that have happened as a group, as a community, and it's more as a like let's celebrate all of these wins kind of thing. So it builds on this is a community perspective versus just like, yes, you're going to join and start contributing, and we're going to like micromanage or just like have it's when it comes to open source projects, it very much, we want to make progress, we want to move forward, but it's also recognizing that everyone has day jobs, or school or family commitments, and or all of these things.
It's not always easy finding time for open source, and I'm saying it myself as somebody who does everything open source.
Yeah, I've definitely felt the feels as I've moved jobs and this last 3 months. So it's like 90 days yesterday, woo! Of like my opportunities to contribute have been greatly reduced as I've been like rebalancing time. So this is the thing that's really nice about this kind of community is, you know, it's not like I don't know. It's just a very welcoming, inclusive community that recognizes all the things that we've had in the past year, as well as just changes that people have had in their own personal lives.
That sounds amazing. Floor also wants to congratulate you on your new job.
Thank you. Thank you. I love my job. I work with awesome people. I worked with awesome people before. But it's just, oh, yeah, actually, yes. I am not yet, but some of my peers are hiring, and everyone, like, I kid you not, everyone in my sphere, I know I can't speak to the whole company because no company is like a monoculture, but everyone in my sphere is just amazing. I've got to say, it's one of the most collaborative, open, and inclusive environments from a people ask questions, encourage, like if I ask a question, people give answers. It's just been so great.
I'm sorry. Are there any more questions from the community? You can still leave them in the Discord chat. I have everything open. I have Twitter open. I have Discord open. I have a giant screen just to do these things. If you have questions, still leave them. So one person, what are you looking forward to with Porter? What is happening in the future that you're getting excited about?
So one of the things that happened last year is that we got adopted into CNCF, into the Sandbox program. One of the things that has been really great is the additional resources that are available. So for example, the paid Zoom for meetings, and so that we can have more public meetings because we can have more people in the meetings. And so one of the things that I'm super excited about and seeing how it grows, because like we have values as a community, and then as people join in and contribute, your values slowly evolve and change and grow. And I want to understand how we scale and what that looks like as we get more contributors, as we get more people who are doing more than just casual contributing, what that looks like, and how we can really help change how we talk about, infrastructure as code in general, so that solutions like Porter really can help people.
That sounds great. So another question is, what are topics in open source you wish will be talked about more?
Oh, this is so fascinating. So a lot of times when we talk about open source, it's about like open source licensing, or we talk about open source software, and then there's this whole thing of open source communities. And so one of the things I would love is if we can talk more about open source as the whole, like the ecosystem, the communities, like the people behind all of these things. And the people are not just the contributors, when we say contributors where it's code, But it's all of this. It's the design, it's architecture designs to help people understand what's happening. It's testing. And I know testing a lot of time is code, but sometimes it's just testing the ideas. Should we build the things that we're building? We should be talking more about like the overall uh how does this operate, what it like when we have the concept of users and customers and all of this stuff. We need to have ways to talk about how does this run in an environment. So then what does that look like? Because so much it feels like, especially in a company context, and wanting to provide especially in like a devrel frame of mind, we want to help people and we want to help enterprises, but we want to help people, right? And coming back to that, people is everyone. It's not just the developers. And so I really want us to talk more about all of these pieces when we talk about open source. It's not just the code, it's the people.
I can only agree with that completely as an open source maintainer. So Flo, I want to thank you very much for making up the schedule for the next 10 meetups. So thank you very much for this input. Maybe you can come back and talk about the people and the designs, etc.
That would be fantastic. And we can get folks in design and all these different areas doing just fabulous things so we can grow the community.
I would love to know more about how to design cute mascots for my projects.
Every project needs a mascot. Like it's one of the ways that you define, yes, we care about people in this. We've thought about this and we care about people.
So our time is running out. My clock is ticking next to me. Any very famous last words?
I should have prepared something because I feel like how do you have famous last words? I guess
words, usual last words. Any last words?
I'm gonna borrow from Jordan Cecil, and I'm gonna say that one of the things that he said is context specific, but just in general, this isn't his exact words, was around if people are having problems with the software, then it's a bug. And so often in especially in these times where we can everything can feel overwhelming. And I want to encourage that no matter what, when people are having problems, it's a bug. It's okay to share that. Like not all contributing projects or projects you can contribute to are going to have that philosophy. But if you're having problems with something with Porter or any project, you should feel welcome and encouraged to share that and not feel like you're like making a mistake. So I just want to say, like, if you're an open source project contributor or maintainer, think about it from that perspective, and let's be a little more empathetic to everyone.
Those are famous last words and very amazing last words. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Jennifer, for this amazing introduction to Porter. I think we are all excited about Michelle and also the project itself, of course. I also need to plug some meetup for next week. This time, if you are available, you might want to drop in for yet another amazing language, which is this time not Go, but TypeScript. If you're very interested in learning about TypeScript, join us at the same time, same place next week. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching, and I hope to see you all in the community again soon.